autant tarder maintenant, nous allons maintenant passer maintenant à l'oratrice du jour. Donc, je vais donner la parole à mademoiselle Suzie Litanda, qui va essayer un peu maintenant de nous partager maintenant, de nous exposer maintenant sur comment réussir son interview. Voilà, Suzie, vous avez la parole.
Oh, merci, parfait. Bonjour à tous. Can you hear me?
Oui, nous pouvons vous entendre.
D'accord. OK, moi je vais parler en français et en anglais. Et I'm going to share my screen. Don't stop. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So, as Parfait, thank you, Parfait. As Parfait said, I'm Suzie Litanda, Chevening lead at the British Embassy, Kinshasa. And I'm going to go straight into my presentation. You can probably hear from my accent. My accent is very strong British accent. I am British of nationality, but I am Congolese of origin. Alors, je me débrouille en français, na lingala pe, tout fini kaka mono pour le. Mais pour commencer, je vais commencer à propos de moi. Là, c'est une photo of me and the ambassador at the King's birthday party at the British Embassy this year. So I've been the Chevening lead since 2000 and this year, since March this year. And we cover, as the embassy, we cover the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. Chevening has been taking place for 40 years. We're celebrating our 40th year anniversary this year. We haven't yet had somebody from Central African Republic, but this year we're really pushing to have our first scholar from the Central African Republic. So I know in the slides that Parfait just mentioned, it's all the Chevening alumni for the DRC, they're all the social handles for the DRC, but we do cover the DRC, Republic of Congo, and Central African Republic. And we do have alumni from the Republic of Congo already. And there is my email address, which I do use, and it's probably more effective to use my email address than WhatsApp. So what is Chevening, to just go back to the beginning? So Chevening is the UK government's international scholarship and fellowship program. At the moment, the DRC, Republic of Congo, and Central African Republic, if ever you see DRC, ROC, it stands for Republic of Congo. Sometimes we refer to it as ROC. Central African Republic, sometimes we refer to it as CAR. If you hear me say DRC, ROC, and CAR, that's the three countries. So at the moment, we only do scholarship for these three countries. We do not offer a fellowship program. It's funded by the FCDO, which is a government organization in the UK, and partner organizations locally. And it prepares our future leaders the opportunity to go abroad, to go to the UK precisely, and get a master's degree with the aim of coming back to the home country and making a positive change in the home country. And you go for the period of your study, usually it's 1 year. And when you return back to your home country, you join the alumni network in which Parfait is part of, and many on this call, of initiatives, of events such as the King's birthday party. We had the alumni were invited as well. But just little events that we have throughout the year, you're invited to that, as well as access to certain initiatives across the year. So I'm going to go straight into the interview structure. So the interviews are done online. Since COVID, it was no longer in person. I get a lot of questions about what will happen if I'm in the east of Congo, or what will happen if I'm in CAR, or what will happen if I'm in ROC. You don't have to move for the interview. It will take place via Microsoft Teams. We do not use Zoom. Zoom is not a system that is supported by our security, only Microsoft Teams. So I would suggest that you download Microsoft Teams and get to use it, get to practice using it already. I will say that the interviews will potentially take place next year, March, because the interviews took place this year, March. So that's just my guess that they will take place roughly around that time in March next year, just to give you a rough idea of when to prepare for the interviews. It is in English, so the whole process from the time of the application process up until you are offered the scholarship is in English. Once you are offered the scholarship, that is when you can start to communicate in French. But from now to offer, it's in English. So start practicing. And it will take 1 hour, maybe even less than that, between 45 minutes. The questions itself will be 45 minutes, up to 45 minutes. And then you yourself, you have the opportunity to ask us questions for the last 15 minutes and other admin stuff that I will continue to go through now. The panel will consist of 3 interviewers. Usually, again, this may change, but based on how it took place earlier this year and how I've heard it has taken place previously, it will consist of me on the panel, a UK-based member of staff, and a Chevening alumni. This year, we had the pleasure of having Celeste, Dr. Celeste, and Jacques. I don't know if you're a doctor yet, Jacques, but apologies if you are, on the panel. And it was very useful having them on the panel because a lot of the questions were actually addressed to the alumni who have been through the process. So I can talk to you about what I am told and taught in theory, but in practice, it's actually the alumni who will be able to go into detail as to what exactly happens in reality. So at the end of the questions, we will then ask you to confirm your chosen choice and university. So I will have your application in front of me as I am interviewing you, as we are interviewing you. And I'll have the 3 universities in which you've chosen and the 3 courses in which you've chosen before me. At this point, this is the last time that you can confirm what choice you have made. You will not be able to make any changes after this. And then I also ask you to confirm your passport number. So always have your passport at hand. So my personal observations from the interviews earlier this year were that candidates were not answering the questions. Simply just not answering the questions. In my opinion, I think it was due to nerves. People were nervous, people were anxious, and differences in culture of education. I think this was a big part for me. And why I say that is because being Congolese of origin, I'm aware. It's true, I was born and raised in the UK, so I'm aware of the culture of the UK, and I've got an awareness of the culture in Congo. In the UK, there's a saying that says there's no I in team. Unless the question is talking about you, yourself, a lot of the time the question needs to be answered in terms of a team. Like, what did you do within a team? How did you work together as a team, and what was your contribution in the team? I was hearing a lot of examples of I did this and I did that, and they never did this, and I. From my understanding of the culture in Congo, I may be wrong, but it was, it's almost like in my opinion, it's almost like in Congo, you have to present like how you went above and beyond at all times and how you stood out. But we're in the UK, we're trying to see how you're working together. Yes, give an example of how you stood out, but within a team. So in the way that people were answering them questions, it's almost not fair, because the Congo doesn't understand the culture of the UK. And I guess the UK doesn't understand the culture of Congo. But this is why I said it was important that I take part in an initiative like today to kind of make the merge and make candidates, potential candidates like yourself, understand that, to basically listen carefully to the question. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail in the next slide. And then another observation was that there was limited English. All I can say is practice. And where there are means, invest. if it's possible. But I would say just practice at all times. By email, of course, if you email me, I'll respond back to you in English. That's the way that I can support. But where possible, read, listen, write, from now up until next year, March. And then storytelling. Again, it's answering the question. In the UK, the culture is very direct. If you ask the question, answer the question directly. We don't need to go around the world to get to the answer. Just answer the question. We don't need to know X, Y, and Z. But again, I'll go into more detail in the next slide. And then technical issues, just the cameras and not being able to hear each other. That's not your fault. If it's not going to mark you down, we don't mark people down, we mark people up. But we will say, if there is any issues, we will ask you to switch off your camera. That's fine. And we will go ahead with the interview just through audio. Or if it is really bad, then we reschedule the interview, but by preference, we wouldn't like to do that. So interview techniques. I think if there's one thing that you can take away from this webinar in regards to interviews, is the STAR methods. If you don't know about the STAR method, the S stands for situation, T for task, A for action, and R for result. So when asked a question, a random question that I can think of, it could be as small as demonstrate when you provided customer service. That's not a question that's going to be asked. That's just a question that I've just thought of at the top of my head. And the situation could be, there was a woman that was trying to shop with a pram but the lifts weren't working. That's the situation. The task was, and if you have to say the task, if you have to spell it out literally, the situation was X. The task was to help her shop as she had a wedding the next day. It was to help her shop, as simple as that. The action, as in what you did, is I asked my manager if I could help her up the escalators with her pram, health and safety, especially in the UK, it's very quite important. I asked my manager if I can help her up the escalators, and I assisted her while she was shopping. The result? The result was that she bought 2 pairs of shoes, and she even opens up a company credit card, and she provided my manager with great feedback. You've answered the question. And that's literally tick, tick, tick. So that is an example of the STAR method. So here are my top tips. Listen for the topic of the question at the beginning. So at this year, it was, for example, I would say, the next question is in line with team building. No matter what I say after that, you know already that this question is about team building. So how you're going to respond to that question is in line with team building. Or I might say, or the interviewer might say, the next question and the following question is in regards to your motivation for going on the Chevening program. No matter what the question, however the question is phrased, because it can confuse you, you know that the next question is in line with your motivation of the Chevening program. So listen very carefully to the topic of the question. Take your time in answering the question. I saw a lot of people be very quick to answer the question, but they wasn't answering the question. They were waffling. They were talking a lot, and they didn't gain any points for that. And it's okay to ask the interviewer to repeat the question. That can be a tactic. That could be a way to kind of allow you to think about your question. You can even note things down. That's fine. You can even write the question down, have a moment, think about your answer, and then respond. You will not be marked down for that. The first question is usually not stored. It's just to give you a bit of space to just kind of relax, get used to speaking, get used to seeing us as you're speaking. So remember that. Follow-up questions are good. I know that a lot of people felt got a bit anxious when we was asking more questions, but it's because we could sense that you're trying to say something, but you're not saying it. And we can't mark you on what you're trying to say. We can only mark you on what you are actually saying. So if we're asking you follow-up questions, it's like we want you to say a specific word. We want you to develop on it a bit more. Essentially, we want you to pass. If you've got to the interview stage, we want you to pass, we want you to move forward. So do not see it as a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And even if we don't give any follow-up questions, you've probably answered the question already, or we probably just haven't thought of a question on the spot, to be honest with you. And I would say, it's just like in the staff methods, questions are to be answered as though you're talking to a young person. So not a child, not a baby, but somebody who you have to explain things in detail and as though they don't know anything. So you may think that I know that you use Google Mail as an organizational tool. I don't know that. I'm not psychic. We're not in your life. You need to break it down. You may think that we know that you've taken English as an extra curriculum kind of activity. It may be in your application, but develop on it. So you really need to think they don't know anything, explain it in detail and make it clear. Expand on your application, as I just mentioned. Don't repeat what you've written on your application. We will have your application in front of us, but just expand on your examples and really, really break it down. And then lastly, think about why you want to do this scholarship. Not only because you want to go to the UK. You could say that, that's fine, but you need to develop on why. Because the Chevening is for future leaders. It's about going to the UK, getting that education, and coming back to your home country and implementing what you learn over there here. And that is it from me. Does anybody have any questions?